Hello, this is Julian with Coffee Reviews, and today we'll be reviewing the Ruby Batian Natural Processed Kenya from Coffea Circulor. And there's the bag right there. And Coffea Circulor, based out of Arendal, Norway, and this coffee specifically was a suggestion to us by our good friend Ramin. So shoutouts to and thank you to Ramin for the suggestion. Now, if you're not familiar with this coffee roaster or this coffee, then let's just say this is arguably one of our most anticipated reviews of the year for so many reasons. Let's start off by discussing Coffea Circulor, a coffee roaster that has featured on the channel a couple of times before, last year during Cafe Box's Advent Calendar series, and truth be told, I didn't remember those experiences too well, so I went back and watched those videos, and the three biggest takeaways I had from watching those videos was, first off, they have arguably the most impressive coffee catalog I have ever seen from any coffee roaster, as they have so many high-end coffee offerings on their website. The next thing was, again, the ridiculous amount of awards and accolades this coffee roaster has won. As you can see throughout the years, they have really impressed on the coffee stage. And then the third thing was I wasn't necessarily overly impressed with either of the two coffees I had had last year, as there were some other coffee roasters in that Advent calendar that I enjoyed a little bit more than Coffea Circulor. This coffee specifically, though, it's a natural processed Kenyan, and it's the first natural processed Kenyan I've ever had in my entire life. They're pretty rare, they're harder to find. They've been a little trendy recently, but for so many years it's been extremely hard to find a natural processed Kenyan. And this is also a Batian variety. And the second I mentioned it to pretty much any coffee person, they've kind of raised their eyebrow, as that's a really unique variety. It's a more recently discovered variety as well. So this being a 100% Batian and a natural processed Kenyan, definitely raised some eyebrows, especially given that it's done by such a prestigious coffee roaster. Very much looking forward to discussing this. This right here is day 23 of this coffee. And Coffea Circulor has arguably the most detailed instructions for brewing their coffee out of any coffee roaster I know. They even kind of show it on the back of their bags. But the recipe I settled on for this was their recipe, a 15:1 water to coffee ratio brewed at 95 degrees Celsius, which translates to about 201 degrees Fahrenheit through the V60, which I know a lot of people are going to be happy about, and we'll discuss why we settled on the V60 a little later. And they are a light Nordic for the roast profile. And it is also worth noting that we went with a softer TDS water, as they're very high on the importance of the water in their coffee. So that is worth noting. We settled on something about 6 TDS, which is lower than they even suggest, but we liked it best that way. All right, let's go ahead and start discussing the coffee itself. Day 11, which was the first time we tried it, and we actually did a blind taste test with 2 different waters. So one at 6 and one at 40 to see which one we liked a little bit better. And we liked the softer TDS water a little bit more. Again, they even sent us a note that came with the coffee saying go between 10 and 50 TDS on your water. We're not going to nerd out into the watery details too much, but I genuinely believe water makes a huge difference with your coffee. As before I even started this channel, I went and tried so many different waters to see which way I liked the coffee the best. And from that first impression, the coffee was just extremely lively, and there was a lingering and lasting finish. Off the top, it was a super strong abundance of tropical fruits ranging from strawberry to banana, and a really pronounced nutty finish in the cup. Really extreme cup of coffee from that first impression. It reminded me a bit of the natural and anaerobic natural processed Ugandans from Black and White, and I remember kind of looking to see where the coffees are in the map to see how close the farms are to see, why they tasted so similar, and yeah, I can definitely see why. They're pretty close to each other. Day 12 went back, and the berry was by far the most pronounced flavor, and it had a very strong acidity, so I was just going to call this a dominant acidic berry at this point, and that's not necessarily been a coffee I've enjoyed throughout this year, so to this point I wasn't necessarily overly impressed with this coffee. Day 14 went back, and the coffee was still really acidic, and it is worth noting these were all done through the Chemex, as I typically like coffee best through the Chemex. And they have a really complicated Chemex recipe, which involves 2 different kettles, 2 different temperatures, a lot of different pours, and I was following the recipe, and I just wasn't necessarily loving the coffee. On day 14, slight purple candy as the secondary characteristic with some nuttiness in the finish, and I thought it was fine. Day 15, I brewed it through the V60, as I promised I'd brew it through the V60. Most coffees, almost every coffee, I brew through the V60 as well, just to see if I get something a little different, and it was significantly better. So much of the acidity had been toned down. In its place was a really pretty sweet purple candy, which I was quite enjoying, hard candy. Berry sweetness, still highly present in the cup, but it was a more well-rounded sweetness at this time, so I was wondering, okay, is this between the aging of the coffee, or is it between the brew method? And then day 17 went back through the V60, and I was really impressed. Biggest standout today of this cup of coffee is it was brewed again through the V60, and it was so much sweeter. there was a really dominant stone fruit in the finish, and it was really pronounced and it was really pretty. They list on here a yellow plum, and it could be a yellow plum. I don't know what yellow plums taste like. There's definitely a very strong purple, darker plum in this cup of coffee, but it tasted more like a peach to me, and I adore peach, especially in the finish, and it was really impressive. I was really blown away on day 17. Day 19, went back to the Chemex to see again, is it just the aging or is it the brew method? And the Chemex really strips away that stone fruit finish in this cup of coffee. It just does take away a lot of the really pretty characteristics that have been coming from this coffee. I know the Chemex has a lot of shortcomings. I've discussed that with some other people, and I was really surprised to see just how much better this cup of coffee was through the V60 than through the Chemex. So I stopped with the Chemex and just settled on the V60 for this coffee specifically. Day 21, essentially just going to describe this as a pretty tricky cup of coffee. Radiates a strong purple candy experience, but underneath is this really dominant purple taste. Again, we'll attribute it to this kind of darker, fleshy fruit. And then there's this amazing peach-like stone fruit in the finish that lingers. Extremely sweet, extremely vibrant cup. It's a pretty wild experience. All right, let's go ahead and put up the tasting wheel so you can see what we were getting. All right, and of course the stone fruit is at a level 5, because once I was able to figure out this coffee and get it right, the stone fruit really radiates, it's really pronounced, and it is just divine. Between the kind of peachy finish that I'm tasting, as well as the other kind of plums that come in this cup of coffee, probably one of the most plum-dominant cups of coffee I've ever experienced in my life. This is really impressive, and that stone fruit is more than justified at that level 5. Sweetness level 4, yes. I think level 4 is perfect for it. I don't think I would push it up to a level 5. Finish, yeah, it has a pretty lasting finish, but not the most lasting finish ever. Acidity, level 4, it's still a pretty acidic cup of coffee. I mean, it's a pretty light cup of coffee, so that's to be expected. Berry fruit's pretty high. I haven't mentioned it, but obviously there was a lot of strawberry throughout the time drinking this cup of coffee as well, and I was getting a lot of blackberry too, kind of a more tart blackberry in this cup of coffee. I think they have black currants listed, so that would make a lot of sense, but yeah, quite a bit of blackberry in this. It's a little bit of a smokier cup of coffee than I was necessarily expecting, so the smokiness is kind of high in that sense. But body, medium, I mean, that's probably going to be a little bit more expected given that this is a more body type of brew method that I was using. Cleanliness, pretty low. I'm going to say actually having the cleanliness at level 2 is kind of impressive given that it's both a Kenyan and a natural processed coffee. So level 2 is really, really good for tasting wheel given what the coffee is. But I don't think there's too much else worth discussing. Obviously, this tasting wheel would look extremely different if I were to chart it with a Chemex or something else, or even different days. But for the most part, yeah, that's about it worth discussing on the tasting wheel. All right, my overall thoughts and impressions of this coffee. I was really, really blown away. Once I figured out this coffee, it was extremely impressive, and that's a testament to both what this coffee is as well as Coffea Circulor. So I have definitely been underrating Coffea Circulor to this point. I have a couple of other coffees from them that I might be trying, I might be reviewing on this channel, I might be kind of keeping for myself. I haven't necessarily decided what to do with those yet, but at the very least they will feature again this year if I do decide to do Cafe Box's advent calendar, which seems to be the direction I'm leaning right now. But as far as this coffee goes, given my first experience with a natural processed Kenyan, it was really, really impressive. I think the question is going to be whether I like this one or the Kianjege more, and that's really tough. I loved the way that the Kianjege kind of tasted like gummy worms, but this one had the peachy finish, which I adore. So it's kind of a coin flip. I won't decide at this point, but I guess I would say don't be surprised if this coffee does end up on my top 10 coffees of the year list, as it was just something really impressive that blew me away in so many senses. Type of person I would suggest this coffee to, definitely keep in mind a lot of these things: lighter profiled, acidic, sweet, really dominant and really tricky, like really dominant pronounced flavors in this cup of coffee, and really tricky cup of coffee. I think once you get all of these things right, if you're willing to work through this coffee, then you're going to be really impressed with this coffee as well. Keep all of those things in mind, as this is going to be a really out there, fruity, vibrant cup of coffee that those people that enjoy those coffees like I do, they'll definitely enjoy it. I think that's pretty much the way I can leave this review. If you have by chance had an opportunity to try this coffee, or any natural processed Kenyan for that matter, I would love to know your thoughts and impressions of them, this coffee roaster, it, or that as well. If you're enjoying the content, give this video a like and subscribe if you're not already subscribed. This right here has been a review of the Ruby Batian natural processed Kenya from Coffea Circulor. Thank you for watching.